What's up, Wizards, Dev, SPMTG, YouTube.com, we like magic, all that stuff, you know by now. Today, I'm going to do something different, if you can't tell by the sort of, the setup here. Today, well, I wasn't going to put a video out, honestly. I was just going to wait a day or two and maybe put a video out with some brews for Ajani. But I figured what I would do, since I hadn't put out a video in a couple of days, and I like putting out videos, I like you guys, that I would do something I've never done and I've never actually seen done on YouTube, and just sort of take you through the preliminary deck building process. This is a rough draft of not only a deck, but maybe two and a half, I think, that we'll end up doing this video. I'm just going to talk about Ajani this video. I've already said I'm going to do some brews with Ajani. And I just sort of want to take you through my basic thought process when writing out the rough draft of a deck. And yeah, I'm using pen and paper, whatever. It's my I love pen and paper. Never gonna stop. But anyway, this is again, this is something that is foreign to me as far as a content creator. I've never tried this, so let's hope it works out. Let's hope you guys like it. We're just gonna start with sort of a basic shell here. I want to talk about like a green-white mid-range or tokens deck. A lot of people have talked about green-white tokens with Ajani. Hey Ziggy, he's up on my shoulder. You can't see him. Bye Ziggy. Anyway, so like a green-white tokens or mid-range build, I want to start with that. I think that's sort of the basic shell of things here. And then maybe talk about if we wanted to make the deck Bant, which I don't think would be a far cry from green-white tokens. And then maybe do Abzan Planeswalkers, Abzan Superfriends, and see what maybe that would end up looking like, at least at an initial pass here. So I've already talked enough with a blank sheet of paper in front of me. It's got to be kind of boring. So I guess Ajani's up here in the top right of your screen now. Let's talk about him for just a second before we go into things. If we're going to brew around Johnny, or at least include him in brews, we got to talk about what he does best. First of all, his card advantage ability, his +2, is really good. It's probably the best part of the card. All things considered, if you build your deck correctly and just a bunch of non-creature permanents, like creature or non-land permanents, creatures, planeswalkers, enchantments, artifacts, and that first build is really good, and sometimes you'll get 2 or 3 cards off of it, and that's crazy. He's got a Swords to Plowshares stapled onto him. That's really good, especially in these like green-white decks that may not be able to play a ton of removal. That's always a good option. And then in a deck full of low-to-the-ground creatures or planeswalkers, that ultimate is great, and is totally likely to get off too. It takes 3 turns to get it off, but that's not really that bad. Or if you wanted to, you could just like cycle. You could alternate +2ing and -2ing between turns, and that seems pretty powerful to me. So Ajani, 6 mana is really the barrier to entry for this guy. That's the only thing. So he's going to be at the top of the curve on whatever deck you're playing him in. So let's do a couple of things here. Let's start with the green-white tokens build, methinks. And we'll go over that real quick. Now, any of these builds, I think, are probably just going to run a whole 2 Ajani, and that is probably it. I hope you can see that. Yeah, you can probably see that. That'll work. And that's probably all I'd want to run. I mean, it's a 6-mana card. And even in the Abzan Planeswalkers deck, that's probably going to run a few 6-mana cards. I would not want to go over 2 with Ajani. So, especially considering in these decks, even the green-white tokens decks, we're going to be having ways of drawing cards. So I think 2 is right. I don't want to go above that. But going from there, I know that especially in green-white tokens, we're going to want to play some planeswalkers. So we're going to play, I think the best way to go is start with 4 Gideon, if we're making the best version of the deck possible. I think that it's probably best to start with 4 Gideon here, which, it could be 3 and then maybe 1 on the board. But if we're making the tokens deck, then I think that Gideon is definitely going to be featured very prominently in that deck. After Ajani, since we're building the deck around Ajani, I had to do him first. But if we're building green-white tokens, then Gideon is definitely the first card to go in. So let's try the playset to begin with. And since this is like the green-white tokens deck from a few months ago, let's try 4 copies also of Nissa, Voice of Zendikar, in the deck as well. VOZ right there. The older deck a few months ago played 4 copies of Nissa. I was never sure if that was the right decision, but just in testing the deck, I think that we'll start with 4 and then maybe we can peel it back from there. But I think that as far as, since this is green-white tokens deck, we're just going to play 4 of the most pertinent planeswalkers to the strategy. So we'll start with this base of planeswalkers. That's a total of 10 right there. Not bad, considering Ajani wants Planeswalkers. Another reason to play 4 Nissas. So let's move on, I think, from Planeswalkers for now. This is sort of the base of the shell of green-white tokens right there. But since Ajani's first ability can get all kinds of stuff, let's focus on that. I'm going to stop off before I talk about creatures. Let's not build that first, because I know that we want to play some amount of Stasis Snare and some amount of Oath of Nissa. Stasis Snare could be our only removal in the entire deck. Again, we could peel this back, but I'm going to start by just playing a whole playset of Stasis Snare here. I think that that's the right way to go. At least, you know, maybe we go back to 3 Stasis Snare and 1 Declaration, in stone, obviously. But maybe even 4 Stasis Snare and 1 Declaration. I can see 1 Declaration sneaking its way into this, is all I'm saying. Then I'll play 3 Oath of Nissa alongside that. I think that's probably the way to go. We definitely want to play Oath. We're going to be playing a bunch of cards that it can hit. It's good action on turn 1, and it's some mana fixing, even though we don't need too much of it in this deck. But just, you know, 1 mana for card advantage is fantastic. So I want to do that. And there's other upsides to it too. So I think 3 Oath is the way to go, if not 4. And I could see peeling this back 1 copy to play in 2. It all depends. We don't need the fixing as much in this deck, like previously stated there. But I think that 3 is still definitely the right way to go. It's just card advantage is great. So let's do that. But into the creatures, which is probably the most flexible part of the deck. In a green-white tokens build that's playing this many Planeswalkers, I think that I want to play some amount of Sylvan Advocates. It might be 3, but I'm going to again start with 4. You know, I like the idea of just starting off with 4 of your strongest cards, the ones that you want to play the most, at least, the most justifiable cards in the deck. And then from there, you can shave copies to put in, you know, pet cards and stuff that you think might work in testing. Go from there. So I think 4 Sylvan Advocate's good, not only to, you know, it's a great body in the early game. You know, 2/3 can block a lot of things. It can attack into a lot of control decks, so that's good. But we're also looking to have something that we can play early that sets us up to protect our Planeswalkers more easily. And Sylvan Advocate's really good at that. Mid-game, it gets great, you know. So I definitely want to play at least 3, if not 4 Advocates. Ziggy's back on my shoulder. I'm going to need you off, buddy. I'm sorry. I love you. But anyway, let's go from there. I want to also draw cards in this deck. And again, have early game ways of eventually protecting Planeswalkers or maybe absorbing early damage. And with that in mind, I want to play some amount of Thraben Inspector. And I think that off the rip, 3 is probably the right way to go here. And that could go to 4, or it could even go down to 2. That's pretty flexible, Inspector is. But there's another reason I want to play Inspector, and that's because I think that, you know, it's unavoidable that we have to play the playset of Smuggler's Copter. And again, we're just trying to build the best version of the deck that we can while we're writing things up here. And Heart of Kiran could go in this, and we might want to make it a 3 of instead of the 4 of Smuggler's Copter, which would free up a slot. Definitely, but I want to draw cards in the early game. I definitely want to do that. And we've got Sylvan Advocate and Inspector already to crew it for us. Gideon can crew it. Nissa can crew it after a buff, so there's that. But I think that it's one or the other, and I want to try Smuggler's Copter to begin with. In the Super Friends build, and Abzan will almost certainly play Heart of Kiran because of all the sheer volume of Planeswalkers in that deck. But we do have 10 in this deck, and, you know, we could always go Heart of Kiran into Nissa the next turn, +1 Nissa, and then go ahead and take that token off to swing in with Heart. Or just, you know, leave that up, leave Heart of Kiran up if we don't want to lose 2 loyalty. You know, we could always swing in that turn. It's got Vigilance, and then remove another counter from Nissa and block with it if need be. But I like the idea of leaving it up and not removing any loyalty from Nissa on turn 3. It all depends on what we're playing against. But anyway, that's a lot of play. We might be able to play Heart of Kiran in this. But I'm going to stick with Smuggler's Copter for now. That's going to be a big question when building decks, honestly. You know, is it going to be 4 Smuggler's Copter, 4 Heart of Kiran, 3 Heart of Kiran, 4 Smuggler's Copter, 2 Heart of Kiran? You know, that's possible. So that's going to be something that's going to need to be hammered out in testing for a lot of players when trying to figure out the new format. But anyway, let's move on to other creatures I want to play. I want to make room for some amount of Tireless Tracker, and my gut tells me 2, but you see me writing the number 3. I'm going to go with 3 Tire Tracks for now. Again, a way of, this will also accrue Smuggler's Copter on turn 3. That's not bad. But also, it gets bigger on its own. It draws cards. That's always good. So I'm going to go with some amount of Tire Tracks. Just a fantastic creature. So what do we have already? We have 4, 8, 12, 16, 22, 23, 25, 23. We have 31 cards in this deck. So I want to play 35 main deck cards, making room for 25 lands here. So by the same token, I want one more big creature. We're not playing anything for 5 mana in the deck, and so a way to fill out the curve at 5 would either be Nissa Vital Force, which could be a way to do things, but we're already playing 4 Nissas. And the old Green White Tokens deck played both Nissa Voice of Zendikar and Nissa Vastwood Seer. So it's not unheard of to play a bunch of Nissas or anything. But at 5 mana in this deck, with all the token generation and all the other small creatures, I think I'm going to spend 2 slots on Verdurous Gearhulk here. I think that's a good way to go. I'm going to put Verdurous Hulk. The murderous Verdurous. I think as far as creatures go, he's a great top end. I think I misspelled Verdurous there. It's a U, if I'm not mistaken. But in any case, I think that he's just a good in-game strategy, too. He's sort of like ultimating Ajani, like a mini ultimate on Ajani. Big body, he can be an 8/8, or he can spread out value among your tokens, or make your Sylvan Advocates with Raven Inspectors bigger. Just, I think that he's just, again, 5 mana. Coming down, let's say you don't have your Planeswalker playing together, he can make all your dudes big, or at least a couple of your dudes really big, and help you win the game. So I just think that he's another good mid-game strategy that can help you end the game quickly. So I like the idea of Verdurous Hulk here. And there's a bunch of stuff that we could play in this slot. Again, I really want to play Vital Force, but I don't want to play all those Nissas. And she'll probably show up over Voice of Zendikar in the Abzan deck, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I've got 2 slots left. And there's an awful lot. I should mention that instead of Sylvan Advocate and maybe Raven Inspector, Smuggler's Copter, those cards, you can always opt for a Selfless Spirit or, Selfless Spirit and Afenza package here. And that could also be good in a deck with all the tokens. I really wouldn't mind spending these last 2 slots on Selfless Spirit. I think that would be not a bad choice at all with all the tokens. Just a way to save them. Or, spend the last 2 slots on Anafenza, on Avacyn, I should say. Because another way to save all of our guys, another good mid-game strategy, we could play Avacyn over Verdurous Hulk even. So there's always that to consider, but I'd like to try this basic package first. And since we've got 2 slots open, I actually think, just, gut reaction here, let me know how you feel about this. In testing, I would try 2 Cultivator's Caravan first, and that looks probably weird, but we've got different ways of crewing the Caravan. We've got an emblem, or Nissa gives tokens to, counters to all of our guys. Then we can easily crew it. We can crew it also with Sylvan Advocate after it gets a little bit bigger. We can crew it with Tireless Tracker, which is the easiest way to crew it. We can crew it with Verdurous Gearhulk, or after a Verdurous Gearhulk, we can crew it more easily. So I think that Cultivator's Caravan is a way to, have a big creature that swings in, yes, but that's not really the primary function. I think that I want to get to either Gearhulk or especially Ajani a turn early. A 6 mana Planeswalker is a lot. And this will help fix our mana for what it's worth, But I think the ramp is what's most important here. But it's also something that can swing in as a 5/5 if we need it to. So a lot of versatility on it. I've always liked Cultivator's Caravan, but there's other stuff. You can play some amount of Always Watching. You could also play, instead of Verdurous Hulk or Cultivator's Caravan, another 5 mana option here is Angel of Invention. I think that could work too in this deck. But I would stick with, for the preliminary round of testing, I would stick with this 35 card main deck. And the lands would just be, Canopy Vista, Frontier Village. You'd probably put like Aether Hub in there. Maybe Westvale Abbey, that would probably go in. And then just, maybe some Evolving Wilds, but I doubt it. And then just Forest and Plains. So I don't think the mana base would be too hard to figure out here. But I do want some amount of ramp. I'm not really sure about the Caravan, but I would definitely test that. But again, there's other slots. There's Angel of Invention. There's Selfless Spirit. There's Declaration in Stone. We talked about that earlier if you wanted some more removal in the deck. But all of this could go in the sideboard, and also Archangel Avacyn. The sideboard would maybe have Natural State or, Fragmentize in it. You could always play Fumigate in the board if you wanted to, or even the White Gearhulk. That could work. And there's other stuff that I'm missing. There's Appetite for the Unnatural maybe. So you've got options. There's Plummet, Clip Wings, all that stuff. So you've actually got really good sideboard options in these colors right now. And again, I could see maybe slipping in Declaration in the main deck somewhere in here. Maybe peel off an Advocate or even a Tireless Tracker. You don't have to. I don't know that we have to play Smuggler's Copter here in this slot. We could play Heart of Kiran instead, or just something entirely different. You know, you can play Selfless Spirit here. So there's that. But I think that this would be the preliminary list I would test. You know, a lot of 4-ofs, but a lot of those again will probably get shaved off in favor of other stuff. One of the Gideons may get shaved and put into the sideboard in favor of a Declaration or a Selfless Spirit. I could see that. But there's other stuff. Let me know what I missed here, because the next step I would usually undertake, take a sip of my coffee here, is to go to Magic Cards Info and just put in all the sets that are in Standard and then Green, White, and Artifacts, and look over all the available options. And if you wanted to make this deck budget, you could go off the Angel of Invention theme and play like Servo Exhibition or Glint Sleeve Artisan. There's also that. There's a bunch of cards. Actually, there's the green thing that gives you, you lets you draw a card when it comes into play. For each card you have like +1/+1 counter or something like that. You can play that in a budget build. So, you know, if you wanted to lower the cost, you could not play the Gideons or the Nissas. Maybe not play Verdurous Hulk or Sylvan Advocates. And there's still a wealth of options. You know, you could play Fabricate cards, basically. That would probably work. It would be a couple of tiers below what I think we've got here. But for a budget deck, it would probably cost you like under $100. It would still be probably really, really playable. So there's an option there. But with this shell, I also want to point out, this is the other half. You know, I said like 2.5 decks maybe. If you wanted to play Bant, I think the best reasons to do that would be Reflector Mage and probably Tamiyo in that situation. So if we were going to do that, then you could always take off, again, maybe Verdurous Gearhulks, Cultivator's Caravans could come out, Gideon again could come out if you wanted to jam in the full Reflector Mage. And probably just one Tamiyo, but maybe two, possibly two, especially with the Sylvan Advocates, you might want two Tamiyos. And by the way, Tamiyo would work really well with Heart of Kiran too. Just Vigilance Creatures she's really good with. So I could see doing that too. I just don't know if I'd want to make the deck Bant. I like to keep it simple here. If we were going to add a color, I would probably go with black. Let me flip a page here so we can talk about Abzan Superfriends. And you know, this deck doesn't have to be just Abzan. It could be 4 or 5 colors even. But if we add blue, we're not getting a whole lot. We're getting Tamiya, we're getting Jace Unraveler's Secrets, which is really good. We're getting Kiora, you know, who cares? There's some other stuff. Dovin Bond. We're getting him. There's some things. Saheeli Rai, I guess, if we also added the red. Red's got a really good case for a couple Planeswalkers, mostly the Chandras. You know, Chandra Flamecaller is very good. And Chandra Torch of Defiance is also quite good. Nahiri, pretty good option too, as far as red Planeswalkers. But in the shell of the deck, just testing it out to begin with, I would probably, again, keep it simple and stick with 3 colors, especially since I think that those colors are the ones with the best Planeswalkers. So we start again with 2 Ajanis in this deck here. All the same reasons. This deck's going to play more Planeswalkers, though, than the last one, almost certainly. Again, Super Friends deck. So with that in mind, what are the best Planeswalkers to play? Well, we're going to definitely play at least 3 Liliana. She's the best Planeswalker in the format, which is arguable, but by all accounts right now, as far as competitive play, it's like her and Gideon are the 2 best. So definitely make room for Liliana. She's probably the best reason to even add black to the deck in the first place. Along with Sorin and Obnic Silas. Now we got to watch our 6 drops in this deck, because I want to play Sorin, and I also kind of want to play a couple of copies of Deploy the Gatewatch, but I don't want to go too crazy on that. Deploy tends to be the worst card in its own deck. So I wouldn't go all the way and play like 4 copies. I tried 3 in the last Deploy deck I played, and even then it'll creep up into your hand a little bit too often. 1 a game is usually enough. So 2 or 3 is fine. And we'll just see how many slots we have left by the time we get down to Deploy. I think that's the way to do it. So I'd probably go with 2 Sorin, although that could be 1, especially if you're going 4 colors and adding red. That other 6-mana Planeswalker could be a Chandra Flamecaller. That would probably be the way to go there. I'm going to go 2 Sorins. I still really like Sorin a lot. He doesn't see hardly any play at all anymore, if any, period. But he was a key piece in the white-black control deck that I think was actually one of the best decks in the format. World champion deck, I believe, or one of the higher champions. I think it was world champion though. So white black control is no joke, and Sorum was a big part of that, and he's still really really good by my estimation. And Obnixilis, I would probably go with a 2 of Obnix as well. He's another planeswalker I really like. 5 mana is kind of a lot, but we got to get there on the curve anyway. We're going to 6. We're going pretty hard at 6 mana too. So I think that Obnix is fine here, and just a couple copies. So let's also force him because card advantage and killing creatures is amazing. And then 2 copies. It might go down to 1 honestly, but I would try to jam at the very beginning here 2 copies of Nissa Vital Force. Now in the sideboard, I might play. And this video is going long already. Sorry about that. But in the sideboard, you could play Nissa Voice of Zendikar. I could see doing that, or maybe even Nature's Artisan. I can see doing that too. Nature's Artisan is actually not the worst card ever. It's supposed to not be good at all, but card advantage is again very good. So Nature's Artisan is not terrible, but I like Vital Force, especially considering it lets us get Planeswalkers back that we've lost. We've got a bunch of Planeswalkers in the deck, so I like Vital Force in here. And again, it might just be 1, but I would start with 2 when testing the deck out. Aside from that, I mean the other best Planeswalker in the format is Gideon, so I'd probably start with 3 copies of him in this deck. And so far, that's 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, that's, wow. 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Just had to make sure. That's 14 Planeswalkers, which is probably where I'd stop, considering all the other stuff that I kind of want to make room for. We have to protect our Planeswalkers, so we have to play some removal, we have to play some creatures. And in this deck, with all the 6-drops, I do want to make room for some rampy elements here. And I also want to play some amount of Oath of Nissa, and I would start with 3, I think, although that could actually go up to 4, and if you're playing any more colors, it would certainly be 4. If we're playing 4 colors, I would play 4 Oath of Nissa all day. Just the mana fixing is so important at that point. And actually, even without blue or red cards in the mana base, we might be able to pull off playing a blue or red Planeswalker. Decks in the format, the green-white tokens deck actually morphed into playing 1 or 2 copies of Chandra Flamecaller in the main deck, even though it didn't play red in the mana base at all. Just it really counted on Oath of Nissa to come through for it. So we got to play Oath of Nissa. The card's just too good in Superfriends. I mean, I would probably play, again, some amount of Sylvan Advocates. I'll go ahead and say 4 here because we really are going to be running very, very low on 2 mana plays in this deck, and we can't just start the game on turn 3. So Sylvan Advocate will be a really good way of setting up protection for our Planeswalkers. I mean, it's just good against a bunch of stuff. So Advocate, he's just sort of a stock piece, and he can again be shaved down to 3 copies if we need to accommodate other stuff. And in this deck, I already said I'd play Heart of Kiran. But I think I would just play him that as a 3 of to start things off. And I'm actually open to Heart of Kiran being a 4 of. I really am. We play 4 of some Legends and Planeswalkers in the past, and Heart of Kiran could be so good that I can see it being 4 of. But we'll start with 3 because we're playing 14 Planeswalkers. We can easily just remove a loyalty from a Planeswalker and swing in with Heart. Or block, for that matter. And protect a Planeswalker. That's what's cool, is you can protect a Planeswalker from taking 3 or 4 loyalty counters worth of damage by just taking off 1 loyalty counter and blocking with a Heart. So that seems pretty darn good right there. So we'll play a bunch of those. And I think that Stasis Snare is still well in order to work with Ajani, but I'm just going to cut it down to 3 Stasis Snare in this deck. We've got a lot more ways of removing creatures because a lot of our Planeswalkers do that. But again, we want to get it off of Ajani. So let's do that. And then we really kind of running out of slots here. I think there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 27 slots. And I probably want to do 26 lands in this deck. So we're really, really running low. But I want to play Tireless Tracker again in this deck. I also want to play Servant of the Conduit. I'll go ahead and put in the 4 Servants. I will do that. Again, mana fixing is very important. And this could also be Cultivator's Caravan like in the last deck. But I think that we really, really need 2 mana plays in this deck. So We also need 2-mana plays in the last deck, to be honest with you, but I'd rather have Servant in this deck all day. So let's try that. And then we've got, what, 4 slots left? Let me do another check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 1. So yeah, we've got 3 slots left in the deck. Jeez. I really, really want to play Tireless Tracker in this deck, and I also want to play Deploy the Gatewatch. So what I would probably do here is maybe cut it down to 2 Stasis Snare is probably the right call. At least 2 Stasis Snare main deck. So let's do that. Let's go 2 Stasis Snare here instead of 3. And then I'll split a playset. I'll do 2 Tireless Tracker, I think is the way to go, and then 2 copies of Deploy the Gatewatch here. And Deploy the Gatewatch actually might not even have to be in the deck at the end of the day. It really wouldn't. 14 Planeswalkers I'm not even sure is enough. I want to play something like 18 Planeswalkers or something with Deploy. So Deploy, feel free to take that out probably. I'd like, just after a few rounds of testing, we'll see how that works. But this is probably how I'd build Abzan Walkers to start off with. And if we wanted to Deploy the Gatewatch to really work for us, I'd add another color and go for more Planeswalkers. We could add Nahiri. That could be pretty good, especially if we wanted to add like a 1-of Emrakul. That could work really well. Another good in-game option. So there's that to consider. Torch of Defiance and Flamecaller are also really, really good Planeswalkers. That could go in this deck even without allocating more mana in the base. I mean, we've got Oath of Nissa and we've got Servant of the Conduit, so we could probably slip an off-color Planeswalker into this deck, but just going into testing, I would probably try this version out right here. And I'll go ahead and put these full deck lists in the description for you, just so you see what we're working with preliminarily. Let me know if you suggest any changes to these, and let me know if you liked this video by liking the video and by leaving a comment down there in the sideboard. I want to know if you enjoyed this series at all and if I should do more of these in the future. I'm thinking about doing one with Pia's Revolution and Scrap Trawler, that card. Thinking about making a deck with that, and I just kind of want to take you over my initial thoughts like I'm doing here. But if you didn't like this, then I won't do that. But let me know how you felt about it. This is just a little experiment that I wanted to try here. And let you guys know how I sort of do the rough draft of a deck. Coffee time. Sorry about that. But yeah, if you enjoyed the content, like the content, tell me how you felt about it down there in the comments. I know this is kind of weird, but hopefully informative and instructive as far as the deck building process goes, the very early deck building process. So let me know how you felt, and then sub if you're new, and I will talk to you cats later. I'm not really sure what I'm doing next. Like I said, I want to do the Pia's Revolution video, but I might do a proper deck tech on that. More Aether Revolt spoilers coming up, and a couple of other things up my sleeve. So stay tuned, so if you're new, and I will catch you cats later. I am Dev from SBMTG. Thanks for watching, my wizards.